Hello, everyone. Here's Mel Cherrygate with another episode. I'm super happy with my guest. I was talking to her a lot actually before we started recording, and her name is Janice, and she is an author. She wrote a book which called Finding Yourself, and it's a memoir. It's talk about her story, and we were just talking about um, the whole anxiety that comes with mental health. That is something that we're still dealing with. She wrote the book. I'm here talking about almost every day about my trauma, but we still have days that you don't feel the best, and you have the moments, and this is what we were talking about, that we want to share, because I think it's important for people who are struggling to know they are not alone. you
No,
know it, right, Janice? It's not just one time thing, and
yeah,
then I'm fine.
yeah.
So hi, Janice, welcome. I'm so
Hi,
happy to have you here.
same here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit about the book first, and then we're gonna have a conversation like I always have. And I think it works better this way. It's more natural, and
Mhm.
so people can identify, and it might help people to reach out. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the book and the process that you were telling me.
Okay, so my memoir, Finding Yourself Out of the Shadows into the Light. First of all, I wanted to say that the my title came long before I even thought of telling my story because I was one of those people who didn't know who I was. I would look in the mirror every day and I would see me but not see me.
Yeah,
Um,
I
you
know.
know, I could do everything in the dark. I always said I'd be better off being blind because I can do everything in the dark without looking at myself. And the reason why is because of, when you go through traumas and you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't see you. You don't see what other people see. You see everything else that's going on inside of you, and that is the shame, the pain, the guilt, rejection, abandonment, just everything that's deep down that you see, and others people is seeing the face of
Yeah,
whoever I am. So I didn't really know who I am, and that scared me a lot. When I finally faced myself, I realized that I needed help, and so um, it was difficult for me from coming from the culture that I'm with. I'm from Jamaica.
mhm,
Um, I'm mixed with Indian, Chinese, and Black. So, there's a mixed culture there that doesn't believe in seeking help um, for mental health or whatever you're going through.
mhm,
So, my journey started, I can say, when I was 3 years old, living with my grandmother in
mhm.
her home with my aunts. Um, I had I was given up by my mom before I turned 2.
Okay, she gave it to
So
your grandma.
she gave me to my grandmother, and she had rejected me from birth. And so I wasn't even supposed to be born, as I was told by my aunt. I was. She heard I cried, and my mother was, on the toilet, and just before she was about to flush me down the toilet, my aunt caught me and grabbed me out of the toilet. Um, I've got evidence in my cervical thing, bones or whatever they want to call it, that
Mm-hmm.
there was some trauma, and it got to be, doctor said it got to be from childhood. Did I have an accident? Because it got to be something very traumatic for me to have my 5 vertebrae totally fused together. And the only thing I can remember being older is maybe because of how I fell in the toilet. And my bones just kind of formed that way. So, not having a significant accident or anything for that to happen, I think that's where it came from. It wasn't until recently I realized on my birth certificate, 'cause I never knew I had a birth certificate before until I was like 15 years old. Didn't even know I had a birthday. That
Right.
my aunt's name was written as my mother. And I guess somehow somebody told her, no, you're not the mother. So she had a line across it and then put my mother's name. So that's evidence to think that she was a mother or whatever she was doing at 19, 20 years old at the time when she fished me out of the toilet. So originally I wasn't supposed to be born. I lived with my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a cultural thing with Indians, but um, I was allowed to sleep with my grandfather, with my step grandfather. He was my step grandfather, and my grandmother and other and her daughters, which is my aunts, they slept in a separate room. Now, the way my grandmother set up the room was that room where my grandfather, step grandfather was, I was locked away, so we were separated from the other part of the house. So she would lock the door from on the other side, and then there would be a bed that pushed against the door. So there was no really way to get into that room. And so, as little as three, I can remember sleeping on the same bed with him, um, where the touching started. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I was being touched. And as I grew a little older, by the time I turned like 7, my sibling came to live with me. And it happened to her too, but she rebelled. They were rebellious kids. I wasn't. I was the angel. I just lay and take whatever. And so she rebelled, and after 2 years, she was sent to my mother to live with my mother. My cousins then came to live with me. They got the same treatment. However, after a year, they complained, and so their mother took me. Now, I had no mother to take me. I had no one else, nowhere to go, so I had to stay in it. So it lasted for 10 years. So from 3 years old all the way till I was 13 years old, it became touching, and then next thing you know, it turned to sexual abuse. It got to the point where the focus was on my breast when I started having, puberty and stuff.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
didn't understand why the focus was right there. But the focus was right there. And then the focus go to somewhere else. It got to the point where I wanted to, even when I started having little bulbs coming up, I wanted to cut it off because I thought that was the reason why I was going through whatever. And to think about it, at 3 years old, going through that, and
Oh my
then going through puberty, and then while you're going through these changes in your body, you have this man who is doing these stuff to my body, and I didn't understand what was taking place or why. Um, the family knew about it, but it was supposed to be a secret.
Oh my God, it happens to a lot of people with
Yeah,
sexual abuse, that the family rather that to stay quiet.
stay quiet.
Mm,
Yeah.
and
So
I can,
that was a huge
yeah,
thing.
I can only imagine the, because when you are at that age and you suffer something so devastating, and you don't understand what's happening,
Hmm.
you have to kind of detach from yourself so you can go through it.
Through it, exactly.
you know.
exactly. And that's what I did. I kind of detached myself, so I was kind of numb to everything that's going on. I thought, okay, if the family said it's a secret not to say anything, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was accepted. I
Hmm.
wasn't the rebellious child. I was called the golden child. So I don't rebel. I don't, I just take it for whatever it is. And it dreaded when it gets dark, and I have to face that. So I didn't like when I see it started getting dark outside, knowing what I'm gonna have to go through for the entire night. And so that was really painful for me as a child. Um, Going through my head all the time, just the motions of it, the touching, and 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 then it got to the sexual part, you know, um, how that felt, what was I feeling in the moment, um, and just laying there and taking it. Like I didn't have any choice, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have anywhere to go. Like my sister or my cousins. It's not that I didn't know my mother. My mother lived not too far from us. I have to walk past her house every day. But I was told not to stop by her, not to see her, not to speak to her, not to have any conversations or anything to do with her.
She had like mental health issues.
No, not that I know of. She was a very good woman from what I see when I kind of look through the gates and see her, and there's always people around her, and she's always laughing. She has her own business, doing hairstylist and stuff like that, as she does at her home. And so and then my sisters were living there, and I thought that they looked happy, and I was like, what about me? So I kind of grew up with neighbors across the street from her. So they
Okay.
became my family because they were very close to my mom. Everybody loves my mom. I'm not going to deny that from her. She rejected me for whatever reason. Out of six siblings, I was the only one she rejected. And throughout my entire life, and it stems into my children as well. I didn't, I didn't hate her for it because I saw that she had good in her. I saw that people loved to be around her. It's just that I wasn't allowed to. I could only stay from a distance and see.
And did you ever got closer to her w- with
I did at the end of her death,
okay,
2018.
okay.
Um, but being growing up with neighbors, it's natural, in a third world country, and we didn't live in like a rich neighborhood. We were living in kind of like the slum kind of area, but it's like we were all educated people, getting out of that kind of um, area, because that's how we were pushed to do better and to get out of the area and stuff like that, and be educated and be something. So that's how everybody was taught in the neighborhood to do. So everybody else in the neighbors were my aunts and my uncles. Everybody was an uncle and aunt to me, right? That's how I grew up. Um, I went through not just the childhood abuse, sexual abuse. I also went through at 12 years old. My grandmother owned a business, a bakery, a very established bakery at her home, and the home was broken into. And I remember the night when I heard the first kick from the door, and it took three kicks before the door came apart, and three men came in with masks, and they demanded money, and they were beating on the door towards where my grandmother was, and asking her to give them money, and she refused to give them money. So they took me, they grabbed me, they kidnapped me. My face was covered. They put something over my face, like a bag or something. So I was taken in my nightgown and everything. Um, and I remembered, like Hansel and Gretel, the story of dropping breadcrumbs to know where you're going, but I didn't have breadcrumbs. So I, with my face covered, I kind of started counting my steps to see how far am I going, or how far they're going to take me. And I counted to a point where I couldn't count no more because I was being pushed. I was held at gunpoint. And just imagine at 12 years old, held at gunpoint. At that moment, I wasn't scared. Believe it or not, I wasn't scared. I I am a believer of God. Since I've been three, I've been kind of going to church with neighbors, and for anybody who was going to church, I would go to church. And I would go to the altar crying and asking God, this God that I didn't even know exists, but I saw people doing it, so I did it too. And nothing changed in my situation, but I still continued doing it. And so I wasn't afraid. I just tell myself that I was going to be okay. I remembered counting my steps, and then everything disappeared from my memory. And I showed up 3 days later. That's what my aunt told me. And she just recently told me that part. She said, "Oh, don't forget that you were kidnapped with all of everything you're going through." I was like, "Oh my God, I was kidnapped. I didn't even remember." And then slowly I remember being taken away, and I remember showing up. I don't remember in between and where I was. I just remember showing up at the house, back at my house, and my aunts were there, police was there. They asked me where I was. I couldn't tell where I was. Then my aunt said to me, "There's blood on your clothes. Go inside and clean up." Um,
I'm
seeing
so
that blood, yeah, seeing that blood at 12 years old, as I grew and went to gynecologists and they asked me, "When did you see your period?" I said, "Oh, at 12 years old," because I related to the blood that I was on my clothes. But now that I'm older, I'm saying to myself, was it really 12 years old when I see my period? I don't know. I just relate that. So I remembered a flash that I was taken to the hospital. And I remembered I had to go back again for a procedure. I don't know what the procedure was. But being older now, I realized that the procedure was I pregnant? Or who was I pregnant for? I remembered being my legs in a stirrup and stuff. So now I'm older. I'm saying that I might have had an abortion. They probably took me for that when I was 12. But in my mind, it's running because I'm saying to myself, was I pregnant for my step grandfather? Oh, or did these people rape me? And I don't even know what exactly happened to me, and that's the part I'm struggling with as well.
yeah.
The unknown, knowing that something happened, but I can't put my fingers on it.
Yeah, you can't remember,
Yeah,
but you you for sure your body remembered the
remembers, remembers the trauma.
and
Exactly,
that's
remember the
probably
trauma.
that's why you have these feelings nowadays that you don't know where it comes from, of fear of being unsafe because you were unsafe for so many years being a
Yeah,
child, and 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 of course you're gonna feel insecure like your whole life
yeah,
because
yeah.
you you didn't have you
It
didn't have
started wrong.
where to go.
Yeah, it started wrong from a toddler, and it just never stopped. Even though I beg God and I pray to God, it's like traumas just come after trauma. So from being kidnapped and whatever, probably had an abortion, I don't know. I remembered bits and pieces now is coming to me when I was at that place where I was kidnapped. I remember seeing a lot of bullets, very shiny bullets, a lot, a lot. And I remembered there was three men, and I was tied up. And I remembered I got loose somehow, and I found myself under a table holding a knife. And I was a very tiny child. And I can picture myself under that table right now with this big knife. Didn't know what I was going to do with a knife at that age. Um, but I held the knife. I heard bits and pieces of, um, forcing, I would say, drugs inside of me, forcing me to take stuff. And then I don't remember anything after that. And it's sad because it's a part of my life that I would have wanted to tap into to maybe would have got some kind of closure. But when you don't know, but you know your body's telling you that this happened and you can't have the recollection, how can you move forward?
Yeah.
How can you put the pieces together?
Yeah, I'm actually overwhelmed with your story. It's so strong and so powerful that you're even here and you're even being able to talk uh, and write a book and tell your story. And now it totally makes sense to me why uh, when I asked you that when you wrote the book that if it helped you and you said no, that is just I'm feeling shame of it. And the worst part about abuse is because we feel guilty,
Yes.
we feel ashamed, you
Yeah.
know, from something that happened to you, and you carry the shame of it,
Yeah.
um, and it's
It's
embarrassing.
something you had no control over. And this is something that my therapist and psychiatrist have been working with me for the last 6 years, trying to get in my head that you did not do anything wrong. You were failed as a child. They who were supposed to protect you did not protect you. And, I try to not to be angry at my family members, because that's not me to keep anger inside of me. Is there anger? Yes, I know that there's anger now, but I don't know anger to who? To myself? To people who hurt me? To people who failed me? I am confused as to who am I supposed to be angry with in this moment now.
Not with yourself for sure, but I know how our mind plays. And it's easier to be angry with ourselves. Maybe because why didn't I do anything, or why didn't, uh, but you had no one for what you're telling me. You had no support in any way. So a child needs to be safe, and even and I'm telling you, a child needs to be safe, even if they're not suffering abuse. You
Hmm.
know, they need to be safe. And if you're suffering abuse in that extent, and you don't know what's happening to your body,
Hmm.
you are truly a survivor of something that most of, most of people could never handle. And as you said before, you didn't go to addiction, you didn't go to drugs or drinking, and you held it by yourself.
I
And
did. I did, but
but you need
because
to release that.
I need to release it. Yeah.
I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm telling you from a place inside of my heart that you have to to release that, and it's the only way for you to have um, I wouldn't say a normal life, but I say a life that you can handle, you know, because um, of course I haven't suffered like you did. I do have my traumas, and I still suffer from trauma,
Yeah.
and I think most of people have trauma. But in your case, it's something that you didn't know what was happening to you.
No, I didn't. And when I thought that it would have stopped there, at some point when I was finally removed when my grandmother died, um, I was about 14 years old when she passed, and I went to live with my aunt and uncle who in that, in times like that, you call them very rich. They were very powerful people. I went to live with their home. I wasn't really accepted at first by my aunt's husband because of his status and because of where I was coming from. And I wasn't that refined kind of person to be around the Prime Minister of Jamaica, to be around the Governor General for dinners. So I was always hidden and left behind because I didn't have that kind of um, persona that I supposed to have in front of
Oh my,
these people. And that's because I didn't know how. Nobody taught me how.
how,
So,
how, how? You were surviving, I think.
yeah, I
You know,
was trying to survive. And so having now to live in their home and they have their two little kids, they were boys, and the treatment that I saw that was different because of who I was. So I always have to be locked up in my room and not able to go out or anything other than church because they were very religious people.
and
So
you, you know, for what you're telling me, most of the time in your life, you were not wanted. You know,
mhm,
people would take you because they have to, but you were not wanted by your mother, and then
ex-
this. And I'm pretty sure that when you suffer the abuse, at least you were getting some kind of attention. And this is completely messed up because the only attention that you were having were abuse.
abuse, exactly. And I learned to accept that as attention, like you said. Um, I lasted for about a couple years with my aunt right through high school years. I was a troubled kid at school. When I say a troubled kid, I didn't like make trouble out there. I was messed up in my head, and so I had to see a guidance counselor. I went to a Catholic school, so there were nuns, and so I had to be in the guidance counselor every day. And they'll ask me for my mother because they have never seen a mother. I have been to the school; they have never seen an adult with me. I just registered myself and started the school, and so they were like, "Well, you can't come back because we don't even have a birth certificate for you." And we never seen a mother for you. So I told a lie. I started making up lies and I said, I don't know why Switzerland came in my head, but Switzerland sounded very, very far from Jamaica. So I know my mother, they could get asked her to come tomorrow. So I said, oh, my mother lived in Switzerland. I don't know on the map where Switzerland was, but it sounded very, very far so that they don't have to keep on asking me for a mother. And then they decided, okay, they got a family member have to come, or else I have to stop coming to school. And they needed a birth certificate. I've been at the school for 2 years, and they don't have a birth certificate. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know I had a birthday. I didn't even know when I was born. Nobody told me anything. So finally, it wasn't a family member that got that. The family members always turned to neighbors, and neighbors would get what they needed for me. Would go to the school and represent me. Never my family, anyone in my family. Um, the only time my family started coming around was my little sister who was 2 and a half years older than I, who dressed up to be like an adult, like thinking that she's an adult to represent me. But soon they found out that she was a kid herself. So that didn't work. So we tried, but no family member would ever represent me. And so when I finally got a birth certificate and they gave me this, the neighbor gave it to me to take to the school, I looked at the age, the year, and I said, I'm a little tiny girl. I'm not supposed to be that old. And it says 1968. So I changed it. I crossed it out and I put 1969. I didn't know that was legal. And I took it to the school and they're like, wow. The nun said, why it was Sister Archer. Her name was Sister Archer. And she said, who did this? This is not right. Did you who crossed it out and write something else? And I said, I did. And she said, why? I said, because I don't think I'm that old because I'm tiny. So I don't think I'm 68, so I put it at 69. And then I had to get a new birth certificate. So my birth certificate is all, you look at my birth certificate now, it's all messed up. There's a lot of cross outs and a lot of signatures and, stuff like that. But anyways, I went through a very difficult time living with my aunt and uncle. My aunt and my mother didn't had a lot of disagreement. They were like oil and water. My mother lived just a block away from where I lived, and I was still told not to stop to see her or whatever. My uncle made it clear they're not in his category, like I said. So I wasn't even allowed. I passed their house every day, driving past their house. I see my siblings, 6 siblings, and they're playing outside, and I think, wow, they look very happy. Maybe if I go there, maybe I'll be happy because I'm not happy where I am because I'm being rejected all the time because of the things that I've been through. So 2 weeks before graduation from high school, I kind of sat my aunt and uncle down and I told them I couldn't live there anymore because it was torture for me. They argue every day because of me, and it becomes overwhelming and overbearing. And
And again, you felt unwanted, right?
exactly, unwanted again. And they were like, "Where are you gonna go?" I said, "I saw my mom and my siblings look very happy, so maybe I'll be happy there too." And they said, "No, you can't go there. Your mother will not accept you." I didn't still at this age still think that she would not accept me. But my uncle took me there, I remember, and he paid her a good sum of money to have me there. Didn't work out. After 2 weeks, the money ran out, and she wanted me out.
Oh my God.
I didn't know where to go. I graduated now from high school at 16, and I was on the street. And I wanted to go to college, a community college at least. I found one. One of my aunt in Canada paid for the first month, which was $236 for the first semester. And the second semester, nobody would pay. So that means I have to leave the school. And I'm, the professor, the young professor, again took me from my body and say it was like a bargain, a business kind of bargain. If I be with him, you will pay for my school fee. That I didn't want to do, but I wanted to go to school, and I had no choice, so I took the deal. And I took the deal, got pregnant at 17, 18, and had my child. And 2 years later, he disappeared. I was out on my own again with a child. I didn't know what to do. I went to my mother and I begged her. I said, if I work, I will give you everything that I work if I get a place to stay. And she says, okay. I was only making $50 an hour at my aunt's place. She owns her own business. $50 a week wasn't much, but I had to give it to my mother. So I didn't have to anything to give to my child. I couldn't afford clothes. I couldn't afford shoes. I couldn't afford the basic underwear or nothing for her. And I remember one day walking to her office, and my uncle, who owns the company, stopped me and he said, I heard you're working with your aunt, and I think it's not a good idea for you to do that. So I said, okay. He said, you know, I'd rather you not go back there. Now, this is my little $50 to have a roof over my head. And I didn't get food from my mom. All her kids would have to be fed first, and I would be last. Meanwhile, I was the helper, so I had to cook, clean everything while I go to work and come back. And my daughter and I weren't allowed to even shower inside the house. We had to shower outside. Um, I stayed there, but then when my uncle rejected me, I called my sister who was working, and she said, come on over to her job and let's talk about it. And while I was there, she was an administrative assistant to one of the general manager there, and they were having a meeting with people, colleagues and stuff. And after the meeting, she kindly asked one of them, "Do you have a job that you can give to my sister?" And he says, "Yeah, I have. I own two stores in the largest mall in the country." And he said, "Show up and meet with this lady, and she'll get you set up." And I did, and I met with her. She was a general manager. 2 days later, this lady showed up, and she kind of looked at me, and she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm such and such, blah blah blah," and never seen her again. 2 days later, police came. I came to work, started my day, and 2 hours later, police showed up, and they said I was. My daughter was only 3, so I was probably about 22. And they said to me, "Ma'am, we have to take you into custody." I said, "For what? What did I do?" They said, "You are charged for a couple of things." I said, What did I do? I didn't do anything. I just started working here." They said, "You're charged for burglary, larceny, couple other stuff that went over my head." But anyways, the most embarrassing thing came when I was cuffed behind my hands were cuffed behind my back, and I was walked through that entire mall, shameless, and going to off to jail. I got my one phone call, and I called my aunt, not the one I was living with, another one, and her husband was a police. So I called her, and she said she'll get down there. I was scared of the charges that they had, and then they not only had that, they had living proof of people, three men that were saying, "Yeah, she promised us sex to help her to do these things." And that was very degrading to me because I couldn't see myself bargaining with somebody like them to say that, for them to say that I, gave them sex. Of course, sex was not a good thing for me again because of the abuse that I went through. And I was scared. Now, in a third world country, jail is not pretty. It's not easy. It's not beautiful. There's nothing good about it. I was thrown in jail. There were male on one side and female on the other side. It was a weekend. It was a Friday, and my aunt tried desperately to get the money together to get bail before the court ends at 4 p.m. It never happened because my other aunt that I was used to live with had promised to put half of it, and she didn't turn up with her half. And so I had to stay there for the weekend until judge comes in on Monday. I was in that jail that night. I was hosed down. They were chanting. The men were chanting, "Bring the newbie out." That's what they would call the newbie. Bring the newbie out. There wasn't anything anywhere to sit in that jail. Everything was flooded with water, and it was dark. And there were a few other females in the cell with me, and the men was across, shouting at me and degrading my body, asking me to take my clothes off. And some point of the night, the wardens will come out and they'll take the new people out, and we will have to strip ourselves in front of everyone. And they would hose us down with cold water, and then put us back in the jail. And then some point of the night, they'll come pick you up. They'll come for you, and they'll take you to the back, and then they'll rape you. At that time, I was pregnant, and nobody knew I was pregnant. And when I got pregnant, I decided to keep the child. I had an option to do an abortion, but I didn't opt for that. And I called the dad for the child for that I was pregnant for. He was living in the States. It was like the love of my life. Since I've been a child, he was the only one that I could talk to and relate to and understood what I was going through. And he was only a few years older than I am and living in the States. I had visited him a couple of times when I was living with my aunt in the summer here in the States. And that's how we got connected and started a relationship. But he was still young, you know. I was only 16. He was like maybe 20 or, 19, 20, going to college. And the first time ever that we had sex, I got pregnant for him. And I decided to keep the child. So in prison, I was the Friday night, the Saturday night, the ritual, the same ritual every night. But that night, that last night, it was the last night. This time when they took me to the back and they slammed me against the desk, I felt an excruciating pain as they take turns. It was three or four, I don't know. I stopped counting by then. I was numb to everything. But that pain that I felt, I knew what I meant for my child, my unborn child. And so I was taken back to my cell and I sat on the floor. It was filled with water. And I remember I was wearing a mustard dress, all soaked and everything. And it was dark and I was in pain. And I gave birth right there on the floor. And the other cellmates was like, they can't know that you have a child here. They'll do worse to you. They'll kill you. They'll take your child from you and much stuff they were telling me. And they told me the only thing we had in there was a toilet. And they told me, you got to take it out and flush it. And I'm like, they can't do that because that was how I was born. And being born that way, and I now have to do that to my child that I wanted so badly. I didn't know if it was a boy or girl. And it came out. And they covered my mouth from screaming so that no one could hear me going through all of that. And I went through that, gave birth, and I held my child. It's a little thing. 6 months, I was right around 6 months old, pregnant, and 6 months pregnant. And I said, I started, because I can't see, because it's dark, so I kind of run my fingers from head all the way, checking the fingers, checking the toes and everything. And then I felt that it was a boy. And I wanted so bad to keep it, but he was already dead. He was lifeless. And I pulled everything out that I could. I yanked everything out so hard. And there were two ladies or girls in there that helped me. And they said, you got to put it in the toilet. And I was like, I can't do that. And I remember holding two hands just like this. And I rested in the toilet. And I was like, I going to do this. Even though I know it's lifeless, I could not do it. And so one of the ladies pressed the flush thing, and I felt the suction, and I grabbed on so hard, almost suctioned my whole entire hands down the drain, and he was gone. And
God, Janice.
I just was numb. Anything could happen to me, and I really didn't care after that. All I could remember now is my turn to my 3-year-old child. She was 2.5, she wasn't exactly 3. And the next day I was released, but I was very bloody and everything. And today I have, from then, I still have the marks on my uterus of not disposing of everything. So I have problems with my uterus ever since then. I had a bleeding issue that nobody could stop until maybe um, 2012. They thought I had bone cancer because I was bleeding too much, more than my body could produce hemoglobin for so many years because of that. And they went inside and they saw all this stuff and they try to get it out, but it's like embedded into the uterus, like part of it becomes part of the uterus. And so I felt like 3 years, 4 years ago, I was bleeding again. At 50 something, I was bleeding and I was having cramps. And I was like, what's going on? Am I supposed to be in menopause? Why am I bleeding? Why am I having cramps? So my doctor called me. She said, come in right away. And she said, we want to make sure it's not cancer or anything. And she had a special doctor that, two doctors that did certain tests to make sure. And what they found, it was a cancer, but they said it can cause cancer. But I have to take out the uterus. What happened was everything that I didn't pull everything out, so it's growing inside of my uterus. Even though I had 2 children, successful children, I suffered after birth for a long time with bleeding issues again, and they couldn't understand. But now it's at the point where they want me to take out my uterus should it turn into cancer, and I refuse to take it out. One, because I felt like if I do, that's my last.
Chance to have a child?
Right. Like I felt like I've lost him totally now, even though it's so many years. But you don't forget when you do certain things as a mother that you don't want to do. And for me, I felt like I told my doctor 2 years ago. She said, "Have you scheduled the surgery?" And I said, "No, I can't." I said, "I'd rather die of cancer. If it will cause me cancer, I'd rather die, but I cannot take it out because that's my last piece of him."
Oh my
And
God.
I wrote in my book that I this that chapter was dedicated to my son who never got a chance to take his first breath. And yes, I will die of cancer if I have to, but I will not take out the uterus because that's part of him that's there, and I will not lose that part of me.
Oh my God.
And
Oh,
so,
it's, I can't even, I don't even know what to say, um, other than you're like the bravest person I ever talked to.
I
Um,
don't think I'm brave. I think I'm the worst person of doing something like that. It's very shameful for me to talk
n-
about it, you know.
you're, you're awesome. You know, it's not you. You were the victim all the time. And, and to survive that, all of that,
Yeah.
it, for me as a woman, and I'm privileged, you know, because I'm white. I'm, I know I'm privileged, and
Hmm.
and to hear that story, it touches so. so so much spots in like my soul in my heart because I of course I can relate it to that, you know, uh, to your suffering because it's something that it's like 3,000 stories on one life and sad and unfair and uh, you know, and that you're here and wrote this book and you're here talking to me. I can't tell you enough how privileged I feel because I never thought it would be something so meaningful and so deep. And and whatever you're going through still, because you have, of course, anxiety and depression and you said you have all your mood swings and but you're here and you have kids, you're writing a book, you're sharing and this is amazing. I mean, I, I don't think you know how many lives you will touch with that. I know I'm forever changed, you know, with my bullshit. Sorry.
It's never a bullshit. You know what? I always say, because even beyond that, I had to go through the whole court system.
Oh
Like I was going to be sentenced for 14 years in prison. And I went through court every month for months. And all I could think about was me being in prison and my daughter will be 17 by the time I came out for something that I've never done. Something only because somebody looked at me, never knew me, but she came on national TV because she was a very powerful lawyer herself, that no lawyers that I tried would not go up against her. That's how powerful she was. She's still alive, and I hate the fact that she is still alive. And I wanted to go to Jamaica, and I wanted to confront her, right? Because she was finally got justice. I thought it was justice. My family called and they were like, "Guess what? This was like 6 years ago. Oh, she finally got locked up in prison for fraud, for this, for that, never to come out. She and everything." And I'm like, wow, I felt good. I felt relief. However, this woman did. I just 3 years ago, I went to Jamaica to confront my uncle, who I was living with, that didn't accept me at first. And I told him exactly what was going on. And it hurt him. He cried. And he didn't know that he was entertaining this woman inside his house as part of the Kiwanis Club in Jamaica, and knew that she was the one who did this to me only because she came on national TV and said that any young girl that comes or works for her husband, I've only met her husband that one night. I've never seen him again. And she said one lie, one lie that took me down like that, because she said I was young and I was too pretty. And I looked at myself till this day and I still can't see myself as being pretty, because to me that was what took me down. And so I want to mask everything of myself
yeah,
and
you
don't
didn't
see
want
myself as that.
to be
Yeah,
pretty. You didn't
yeah,
want to be attractive because
no,
it got you in so many suffering, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I went through the court system, and then the day of sentencing, months later, February 14th, Valentine's Day, I can remember. And my elder sister came from Canada. She was in Canada at the time, and she brought me a pink outfit. She said, look innocent. I said, how much more innocent am I supposed to look than what I am? I know. And only God was with me that day. That nay, one of those men, especially the one that told me that I offered sex to him. The security guard was there as well. I never even met a security guard in my life. And when the judge asked them to point out who Janice Hall was, The security guard couldn't point out exactly who because they put me in the crowd. They didn't put me in the on the stand, and so he had no idea who to point out at that moment. But the guy who had a Rolex watch that the lady gave him to say that I stole and gave it to him to help me, and then promised him sex, he got up and cried in court that day of sentencing, and he said, "I can't do this no more. This was all a lie. I don't know this girl. I've never met her. I was told to say this." And so that was how I got free. And the judge looked at me and he said, "I am very happy that this is the outcome." And he said, "You have a year to file defamation of character." Believe you me, Mel, I could not do that. As much as it pained me and as much as I could have been rich right now, and I'm very poor, I could have made that money, but I could not go through to do that to her. All I wanted was to just be free and be home with my 3-year-old child who was waiting for me. And I cried that night. I went home and I cried that night and I held her as tight as I could. I never told anyone in my family about this child, this pregnancy. The only person who knew about this pregnancy was the father of the child. And I didn't tell him until 5 years ago, 4 years ago, what happened to the child. Because as far as he's concerned, he thought I had did the abortion. I went that way. And he was married by then, and I didn't want to mess with his life that he had. So I didn't say anything until 4 years ago. I opened up and I said it to him, and he's grieving right now and angry because I took this long to tell him. But he was happy that, you know, I came out of it, and he's trying to help me to. We are both trying to work through this
Oh, that,
together.
that's good.
But
That's
yeah,
good. At least
um,
that's a good thing. And now you're with your children, and you live with them.
no, I don't live with them. I disassociate myself with them after the divorce because I was going through a lot, a meltdown. I was going through this whole thing because I didn't know who I was. Because with everything happening to me, my family kept telling me, everyone keeps saying that you need to be like this one. You need to get up and you need to curse. You need to fight. And I didn't know how to do that. And so eventually another trauma happened to me. And this time I decided I'm going to be what they tell me to be. And so I became this person who I didn't like. I became the person that partied all the time. I go out with men. I go out with men that has money, exotic men. And I did it purposely because I wanted to hurt them before they hurt me. I was set out like as a vengeance with men. I studied them. I, I tried to understand what each man likes about a woman and their body because I didn't understand all of that. So I needed to know. And so that was my purpose in life, to go out with these rich men and studied what they like in a woman and then got them to a point and I just walked out and leave them. And I would curse, I would carry on. I was the worst person, but inside my heart it was killing me because this wasn't me. And so it got to the point where I begged God, I said, "God, please give me a different heart. If you don't, I'm going to cut this one out literally because it's hurting me. This is not me. I don't go out for vengeance." And I couldn't do it anymore for so many years. And so God gave me a new heart. And I remember when I got it, and it was a humble heart, a heart that was forgiving, a heart that I didn't have anger for them. So now the anger turned to me. So
Oh,
instead of doing, being angry at everybody else, as my psychiatrist says, you were a foster child in your own home. You moved from home to home to home to home, whoever could take you for their own purpose and gain, which is what they used me for. And it was okay. Finally, after the whole jail incident. 2 years later, my father sponsored me, was living in the States, and we came to America, my sister, my child, and I thought this was a land of opportunity. I thought I was going to be free. I thought that everything that happened was left behind. But then I came here, and 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant, coming up from Jamaica, and my stepmother found out and came in an argument, and she put us out in the cold winter, January, mid-January, freezing rain, packed her bags and put myself, my sister, and our two little kids, 5 and 6 years old, in the freezing rain. We had nowhere to go. We only had a 24-hour McDonald's that we knew up the street, and we walked up there and we lived there for 3 days. My daughter's 38, and she said, Mom, I can remember we used to eat a lot of McDonald's when we first came to America. I said to her, that's because that's where we lived for 3 days until we could find someone to take us in.
And how did you build your life?
I built my life when I first came to America. I was destined after my first child was born. My second child was born. I said, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be successful in America, whatever it takes. And I said, as soon as she's born and I'm able, I will go out there and do what I can to make it work for me and my two girls. And so I did. My first job I took was with Chemical Bank in New York on Wall Street at the time. It's now Chase Bank. And I didn't accept their offer when they offered me a job because they said they gave me full medical, and the medical was full benefits, and the benefits was medical, dental, and vision. And I got the package, the FedEx package, and I'm looking and I'm searching. Coming from Jamaica, working in Jamaica, you get a lot, okay, for benefits. You get shoes benefits. You get, depends on the industry you work in. You get your half of your rent paid. And I'm looking in this package for this full benefits that they said I got. And when I realized, I called them and I said, where's the benefits? They said, you got full benefits, medical, dental, and vision. I said, what about this and what about that? They said, honey, this is not Jamaica. And so culture shock took me and I couldn't
Yeah,
take
of
the
course.
job. And so I went from little odd jobs until I finally land a job that I saw in the paper back then. You found jobs in the paper and you apply.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there. It was a Wall Street job, which is the industry that I'm in right now in telecommunications, and talking about circuits and blah blah blah. And I had no idea, Mel, what they were talking about. But I went to HR and I told them the truth. I said, I have no idea what you do in this company. But I can tell you, if you hire me, I will be able to learn what you do and be the best at it. And they gave me an offer and they gave me that chance. And
Oh, you're
today I'm still
amazing.
doing the
You're
same thing.
you're awesome. You're awesome. And I can tell you one thing that I promise you. I am gonna promote this book with all of my heart
Thank you
because
so much.
I think people need to read this, and you need to get what you deserve, which
Yeah.
you deserve the best in the world. You are a
I,
fighter. You are my hero now. And
oh, I don't think you should say that.
yes,
I don't know if you
you
had
are a
been there with
hero.
me.
You
You,
have to believe that you survived
I
like
sup-
wars, you know, in your own life. You survive wars and you're still there. And I know that, of course, you have trauma, so much trauma, but I can see you still smiling, and I can see the good in you. I can see life in you still. So you have to hold on to that because you've been through hell and back. I thought I've been through hell and back, and but your story um, it's something that uh, it's out of the ordinary, you know. It's something that
That's
changes
what
your
my
life.
doctor said.
When you listen and or people gonna read it, it changed your life. You know, I know it changed mine. I'm not gonna be the same person tonight that I was when I
Oh,
came here in the studio. Yes, you are awesome, and I want to make a live with you,
yeah.
and we're gonna set it up, uh,
Hmm.
and we're gonna keep talking, and I'm gonna promote this book, you know, with everything that I have,
Yeah.
and
I
and
appreciate that.
I have to finish because I have another interview,
Yeah.
but I loved talking to you, and you made me emotional,
Yeah.
and you are a beautiful soul. You're a beautiful woman, and don't forget that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And just don't forget that, we are all not alone. Now I've got you, you got
Yeah,
me. And so we build that community of, I had suicidal plans as well too. I was ready to do it a couple times and God
don't
had saved
do
me
it.
out of
Don't
it.
do it. Don't do it. Please
I,
don't do it.
I'm telling you that as sometimes, like you said earlier, we're at that point where we just feel like this is it. And for me, I think I've lived my life in so much pain that I've accepted death, especially because of the illness that I now have because of it. I have accepted death and I'm okay with it. But I want people to know that they're seen, right? And that they're not alone. But we have to do it together. We can't, it's not a quick fix, it's a journey. And we have to journey together. We have to talk about it. We have to, if my voice and your voice can help bring somebody else speak about it,
It
then
will. It will.
right, it will, and we can save another person's life from going the wrong path. And that's just my goal right now is to save somebody else's life with my
I'm
story,
gonna.
even if I
I'm
can't save myself.
gonna help with everything I can to for you to achieve
Thank you
that.
so much. I appreciate it. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
So stay well. We keep in touch,
Stay
and
well yourself.
and I love you already.
I love you too. I love you too. Let's connect, keep
Let's
talking so
connect,
that we
keep
can
talking.
journey together and
Yes,
help find healing through our own journeys
for
together.
sure, for sure. It was such a pleasure to meet.
Thank you so much, Mel. I appreciate it.
Bye, Janice.
Bye.